Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Hi, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving again. Last episode here. I will be back next Wednesday with a new one, so let's dive in. This might be a little shorter. My apologies, but here we go. First of all, I briefly mentioned this, I think, in a previous episode, but just kind of in passing, and I wanted to just spend a little more on it. I find it fascinating, again, that the funeral of Dick Cheney came and went without any fanfare whatsoever. I mean, it's beyond evident, of course, that people on both sides, so to speak, of the political aisle were not fans of his, and rightfully so for a variety of reasons. However, given the fact that the media seems controlled to a great extent, and that military control over the media is something that, again, seems to be in play, hence executive orders and a number of other things. I find it fascinating, again, that it just came and went in the media without even a mention. In fact, the day of the actual funeral itself, I think I turned on Fox News at exactly 5 o'clock, which is their show, The Five, and they didn't even mention it. It wasn't a top of the show story. It wasn't anything. It was just kind of a ho-hum, whatever. Just a one-line mention, and that was the end of it. And then I started again looking at the individuals that were in the crowd for the actual funeral service, so to speak. And first of all, as it turns out, and I had to look this up, but it's not uncommon for vice presidents to not have the American flag draped over their casket. That was not the case, of course, in this particular instance. There was no American flag draped over Dick Cheney's casket, but even so, I thought to myself, well, I wonder if that's, a normal thing, a normal ceremony kind of thing, or what. And it turns out, again, most vice presidents don't have the American flag draped over their casket, and he didn't either. So either way, there was that. But again, the people in the crowd were interesting because the Trumps were not there. It was just some members of past administrations, and that was it. But the Trumps were not there. And then, again, on the exact same day, Donald Trump was making some interesting posts. Like, again, he dropped a post that said, "And so it begins." That's interesting. Again, open to interpretation. And then, of course, talking about treason and sedition, I believe the exact same day in particular posts. Rather interesting. Again, I think that the implication is that even though Dick Cheney was probably not in good health, of course, he had a pacemaker, among other health problems, I'm sure, and of course, he wasn't a spring chicken by any stretch, but even so, the implication is that he did not go out on his own terms. That, again, he was held to account in one way or another, whether that, again, was not just 9/11 crimes or other crimes, but even potentially going after Donald Trump while Donald Trump was in office, whatever it may be. Again, the media was spinning it as basically saying that the Obamas and the Trumps and J.D. Vance and his wife and whatever, that they were all snubbed, that they were not allowed to attend. Again, kind of interesting. I fully understand, again, that his family has the right to invite whomever they want, and of course, Liz Cheney went after Donald Trump, so why would she invite him in the first place? But even so, the whole thing just seems, again, rather interesting, certainly from a media standpoint. Again, the media was trying to justify why Trump and Obama weren't there, but I don't know. It's odd. The whole thing is odd. Now, with that said, again, talk about control of the media. You have Donald Trump on Truth Social putting out particular memes of himself, and it clearly says Q+. Again, whether it be on his coat, on his collar, in the background, he's openly doing this. He's openly showing people, again, what's actually happening. And then, again, no one's commenting on it. No one in the media. Again, they love his truth posts, and they love showing them. But they do not show him when he's, again, bringing up Q drops, specifically. I mean, it's literally, it's actually unavoidable, but they're finding a way to avoid it. I find that also rather interesting. There was also this. I happened to be perusing the news just briefly, just to see what these different news channels, again, were talking about it at a particular moment. And it turned out just the other day, again, that on CNN, and you've probably heard of this individual, you can certainly look him up, this Fareed Zakaria guy, he's about as hard left-wing as they come. He was on CNN, and he was doing a particular segment, again, basically his name, and saying, it's whatever, Fareed's take or Fareed's opinion or his communication or whatever. And he's basically just riffing. And he's openly admitting and openly saying that the worst states in the United States happen to be blue states, politically speaking, and that these Democrat-run states are the ones that are wasting the most amount of money. Now, if the media wasn't controlled by somebody in a particular direction, why would he ever mention that? Wouldn't he want to keep that as quiet and as close to the vest as humanly possible, even regardless as to how many people online were openly exposing anybody and everybody affiliated with those states, again, specifically New York, Illinois, and California? Why would he do an entire take exposing what it is that goes on within those states and openly identifying them, of course, which we already know, as being Democrat, communistic, and overspending, also with having the highest rates of crime? It seems a bit interesting that, again, there are these individuals in the left-wing media basically bashing the left to their audience, which is the left, and no one's even calling that into question. So again, was it really his own take, or was he told to read it by somebody? This is one of those things I think that people might want to pay attention to some extent, because again, just like this past week with all of the treacherous talk and traitor talk and sedition talk that Donald Trump's been doing on Truth Social regarding, again, Mark Kelly, Slotkin, and the rest of those nitwits who were just like, hey, if you're in the military, then you need to defy orders and everything else. I think, again, he's warming people up to the fact that people are being held accountable for being traitors. It's not being plastered all over the news, but it's being done to at least normalize that language among those who typically don't use that kind of language. Even though, again, back during the Q drops, we were learning about a great deal of this. Treason, sedition, U.S. code, subsections, the whole thing. We're looking up the law on a constant basis. And again, treason and sedition, conspiracy to commit both, was consistently brought up in the Q drops. So again, it was normalized for us back then, but for the people, again, who dismissed it or didn't even know what was going on back then or weren't paying attention to it, it's being normalized now. There was this too, again, a different take potentially, but I've openly said that I don't think that the MGT rift is real between Donald Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think that's completely manufactured. And one of the tip-offs, I think, is because he put the term traitor, the word traitor, in quotations when he was referring to Marjorie Taylor Greene. Just like the way that I'll put the word education in quotations in Substack when I write about education issues on Substack. I'm being facetious when I say education, quote unquote. So I'm not taking it seriously, and I don't think Donald Trump was either. But again, if people are just reading it at face value, then they'd be like, oh my God, he called her a traitor. Nah, he used quotations around it. He's saying Marjorie Traitor Greene, wink, wink, knowing full well that she isn't one. So again, we have to learn the way that they communicate. And if you can pick up on it and people can do their best to basically remember the way in which they communicate, then you can see deeper into what's actually being communicated. Again, take Mark Kelly, Senator Mark Kelly, as an example. This guy is as deep state as they come. And again, that's my opinion, but he's as deep as they get. He's CIA to the bone, has to be. So-called astronaut. I've been on all kinds of military missions and I've been to space 4 times. No one cares because that's all fake. Again, the entire inception of his wife, so to speak, Gabby Giffords, and that entire shooting, allegedly, I think that was also fake. There's no security footage of her being shot. None. Zero. I would contest that was a 100% false flag because it was designed to take guns. And again, that was their immediate political push after all of that. I think she had a severe stroke, and that was it. There was no gunshot. There was nothing. Shot in the head, but survived at close range. Sorry, don't think so. They just used the gun story again to go after guns. My wife was shot and almost died and blah, blah, blah. Now, she looks like a stroke victim. And I think I mentioned this on the show a long time ago, but they did a quick little documentary about him a while back. I think it could have been when he was running for senator the first time, and they ended up showing him basically coming home after being in space. Now, again, this entire thing is arguably one of the largest lies that exists, and it's even at face value, and I'm shocked that people continue to buy it. But they show him, and he's getting out of the plane on the tarmac after being resurfacing, or however the story goes, and they're acting like he can't walk. So they're holding him up because, he's been weightless, quote unquote, this entire time for an extended period of time, so we're helping him walk. And then, after months of being weightless, which, by the way, is physiologically impossible, that if you are literally weightless, your inner ear will completely disrupt your entire balance, and you will uncontrollably vomit. Now, I'm getting off on a tangent here regarding this, but this is important, because again, this lends itself to not only Mark Kelly being a fraud, but the entire NASA, everything being a fraud. And I know I'm changing subject slightly, but follow me on this here. Again, physiologically, it is impossible that a person would even be conscious if they are weightless for an extended period of time. Again, real weightlessness, you will vomit. You will, again, be so dizzy that you might even lose consciousness. And if you don't believe me, you can even pop in that scenario into an AI system and see what it spits back out. And I've done that, and again, here's what it says. It, of course, talks about gravity, quote unquote, which doesn't exist, but it does bring up again how it believes that it pulls your inner ear down in a downward direction, and the organs affiliated with your inner ear canal, which are responsible for balance in a downward direction, keeping a person basically, again, upright and not vomiting. But it says the following. It says, in orbit, it says the autoconia, if I'm saying that right, become weightless and no longer pull consistently in one direction. The otolith organs essentially go quiet or sending conflicting, ambiguous signals to the brain. They detect angular head movements via fluid and inertia, which does not depend on gravity, they say. Rotation sensing remains intact. It says sensory conflict between the otolith organs and semicircular canals, and the brain interprets this mismatch as if poisoned, vomiting reflex. Again, it says most astronauts adapt within 3 to 7 days and feel normal. Well, then that would imply that for the first 3 to 7 days, astronauts are uncontrollably vomiting and have no balance whatsoever, with their head spinning, constantly vomiting for 3 to 7 days in a row. That's physiologically impossible also. It goes on, it says the vestibulo-ocular reflex, or VOR, gain for linear translation, otolith-driven, is reduced in flight and for weeks after return. The reflexes are also altered, or your balance corrections. Again, implying that you won't be able to walk for weeks. And yet, in this Mark Kelly documentary, he comes off of a plane after coming out of the re-entry, whatever that half cone thing is, gets out of that, is receiving assistance walking, and then gets in his car in the parking lot and drives home. And then walks into his house, opens up his fridge, grabs a beer, pops it, gets in his bathing suit, and then sits in his hot tub. He does all of that after being weightless for months in quote-unquote space. And people believe it. It wraps up, again, it's completely impossible. It wraps up and it says this: effects upon returning to gravity, quote unquote. It says otoliths suddenly receive strong, constant downward stimulation again. Many astronauts feel heavy-headed, tilted, or experience violent vertigo when moving the head, especially pitch movements. When was the last time you saw one of these so-called astronauts projectile vomiting after getting out of their lunar capsule thing, whatever the hell? It doesn't happen. How about all those fake, whatever they are, those Amazon rocket rides that the dummies take, up, whatever it is, up a couple of miles above the ground? Again, it's all fake. It says post-flight motion sickness and balance problems are common for 1 to 7 days, sometimes longer after very long missions. Mark Kelly walked into his house out of his car, got a beer, and got in a hot tub. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And then it says risk of falls is highest in the first 24 to 48 hours after landing. In short, weightlessness essentially turns off the otolith gravity sensors, triggers acute motion sickness in most people, forces rapid neural reinterpretation of balance cues, and can leave subtle, sometimes long-lasting changes in otolith symmetry and function, unquote. It's impossible. I'm saying all of that to say this: Mark Kelly is a liar. He's a liar. And the people around him are liars. Because astronauts are liars. In his own defense, too, regarding, again, his comments about the military and how they need to defy an order if they think that it's illegal because Donald Trump's a threat to blah, blah, blah. In all of that stuff, he posted a picture of medals that he has on his uniform and put it online. And Pete Hegseth called him out and openly said, hey, if we ever re-enlist you, we're going to make sure that you receive training on proper uniform etiquette because your medals are out of order and aren't aligned properly and you have them in the wrong spot. He doesn't even know how to dress himself in proper military, military garb. He doesn't know how to do it. Again, is he an actor playing a role? It's possible. He's a bad actor. But he's getting caught doing these particular things again because why? Is he CIA? Probably. But even so, it's embarrassing. And again, it happens right in front of people's faces and they don't see it. And they don't want to see it. They just blindly believe it. Now, again, with all the treason and sedition talk, people, of course, ended up bringing up 18 U.S.C. subsection 2387, which specifically, I think, outlines more what they were doing, those so-called senators. And it says that it's a federal crime statute titled Activities Affecting Armed Forces Generally. It says the following here, quote, prohibits certain actions intended to interfere with the loyalty, morale, or discipline of the military with intent to cause insubordination, disloyalty, mutiny, or refusal of duty, or to interfere with the military recruitment or operations during time of war or national emergency. That pretty much says it, and that pretty much outlines it. Again, all of that is true. Something as simple as interfering with morale, because we are at war legally. This is, again, we are under a national emergency and we are still at war. It says, knowingly advise, counsel, urge, or in any manner cause or attempt to cause insubordination, disloyalty, mutiny, or refusal of duty by any member of the military or naval forces of the United States, or knowingly distribute or attempt to distribute any written or printed material that advises, counsels, or urges insubordination, disloyalty, mutiny, or refusal of duty by members of the armed forces. It says subsection B, all of that was subsection A. Make it illegal with intent to interfere with, impair, or influence the loyalty, morale, or discipline of the military. 2, knowingly interfere with the military recruiting or enlistment activities. Or 2, during time of war, which we are, knowingly cause or attempt to cause the obstruction of military recruiting or enlistment. Now, the penalty for this is a fine, imprisonment for not more than 20 years, or both. It says if the violation results in the death of any person, the offender may be sentenced to death or life imprisonment. See, here's the thing, and again, this is kind of a nutshell point, which is really maddening. But it's an open admission that we have all of these laws on the book, and yet no one's following them, and no one's enforcing them, which is why there's no accountability. If you have such an easy law that can easily be read and easily understood, there's no interpretation, you don't need a law degree to figure that out. Again, if you're even attempting to mess with the morale of individuals who are signing up for the military or people who are already in the military, then that's breaking this law. So, yeah, find them, remove them from office. In Mark Kelly's case, possible court-martial apparently is taking place. Good. Strip him of anything having to do with his military service. They should have done this with John Kerry back again during his Vietnam days and showing up being a Vietnam veteran and screaming and shouting and doing whatever he was doing. Again, I'm not agreeing with the Vietnam War. I'm simply saying that, they could have used this against anybody and countless people over endless decades if they really wanted to, but they're just not enforcing it. In fact, there's no even recent case having anything to do with it, which, again, is ridiculous. Again, look at the entire judicial system as a whole. This particular judge, again, apparently overseeing James Comey's prosecution and Letitia James's prosecution, has allegedly, again, dropped the cases, so they say, because they believe that the prosecuting attorney was unlawfully hired. Seems like a ridiculous technicality, and of course, that's not true. But the simple fact that the judiciary and the corrupt judiciary are in the news on such a constant basis, I don't think is an accident either. This is also a part of this war. The fact, again, that these judges are radicals. They're being told by endless other people to, of course, ignore the Constitution, ignore the law, ignore their job, and just be a political ideologue, because that's what most jobs these days are. You can't just do a particular job, follow the law, follow the rules, follow the policy, and then equally apply it across the board. Again, these people aren't taught they're not taught to do this, not even in law school. Certainly not at the undergrad level or graduate level of training of anything. They're taught, again, to be activists, and they are, across the entire board. But again, as unfortunate as it is, it's still being used again as an educational tool to some extent to wake people up to say, hey, look, this is why the legal system is the way that it is. Because all of these individuals, again, are operating individually and with their own discretion, and they're really not supposed to be doing that. Again, there has to be a cleansing of some kind that takes place nationwide where these people are just flat out removed. It's just far too corrupt. And I don't know what's going to happen next year or in the coming years, but again, it just looks like more and more we're not going to be able to vote our way out of this. But then again, if a sting operation is taking place, it's got to take down these judges too. And regarding, again, James Comey and Letitia James, it's apparently already in the appeals process, which again, it should be easily appealed by an appellate court. So we'll see what happens, but it's exhausting. Now I want to shift gears here, and let me, again, just briefly mention this. There was a video I came across the other day having to do with these data centers, which is a subject, of course, that I've brought up on the show in the past. and it was in the last war video, if memory serves, but these data centers that are being built across the United States are massive. And apparently there's one, I guess, the size of Manhattan, so the video says, that's being built in Louisiana. And people are leaving because they don't want to live there. They say, again, that the traffic is insane, that the center itself is going to be so massive that it's just going to look disgusting, and who on earth would want to, of course, live there? Property values drop, utility costs increase, the whole thing. Of course, property taxes would probably increase as well because the data centers themselves are tax exempt for at least 10 years. But again, it was just a heartbreaking video because you're seeing all of these individuals openly say, I've lived here my entire life, multi-generations, so on and so on, and we're just getting up and leaving because we just don't want to live here anymore. The prices are too exorbitant and it's not worth it. Again, I don't agree with these data centers under any stretch of the imagination. I mean, they're running people out of their homes, which is terrible. But again, that's exactly what they want here in Ohio. And it's what they want theoretically in just about every single state. So I don't have much more to say on it beyond that, but it's clearly not a good move. However, attached to it is this, and at least Ohio is attempting to do something about this. This was on the website Economic Collapse Report, or economiccollapse.report, and it was titled, Ohio Leads Charge to Keep Cash Payments Acceptable, Prevent Globalist Cashless Society. It says the following, quote, Ohio lawmakers are pushing back against the trend of cashless transactions with a new proposal that aims to keep physical money in play for everyday purchases. The currency access to spend here, or cash bill, known as House Bill 554, would mandate that businesses and government offices in the state accept cash for transactions up to $500. This means at least one checkout spot, whether run by a machine or a person, must handle bills and coins without slapping extra fees on cash users. Well, see, here's the oh my God. Here's the bad part about that, and you can already see this happening. They'll take that kiosk or whatever human being, again, is running a checkout aisle, and they'll say, well, we're out of cash. Or they'll say, well, the machine that takes your cash and takes your coins is broken. And they'll put an, out of order sign on the thing, and then you got to go down and do the self-checkout and swipe a card, and that's the way that goes. I mean, unfortunately, these businesses can find a workaround, but either way, it goes on. It says retail giants like Walmart, Costco, and Target have been rolling out self-checkout kiosks that often skip cash altogether, favoring cards and apps. If this bill passes, those stores might need to adjust their setups to include cash options, preserving a traditional payment method that's rooted in American commerce. Yeah, it should always be this way. A representative here from Ohio, a Dave Thomas, said the following, quote, it's simple. Cash is the basis for business in America. Our taxpayers should always have the ability to use cash in their daily lives. No kidding. Many Americans still rely on cash for its reliability and privacy, especially in an era where digital glitches or hacks can freeze accounts. The bill addresses concerns from folks who avoid virtual payments due to security worries or simply prefer the feel of real money. By ensuring cash remains viable, it supports economic freedom and prevents a full shift to tracked electronic-only systems that could leave vulnerable groups behind. Exactly. It says at the federal level, a similar effort is underway with the Payment Choice Act of 2025, backed by Democratic Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania and Republican Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota. Legislation echoes the Ohio plan, requiring businesses nationwide to accept cash and barring higher prices for those who pay with it. It says if the Ohio initiative is successful, it could spark more action in other states and reinforce the need at the federal level. As globalists push us toward a cashless society, now's the time to take a stand against it. Good. Again, they're doing something. They're trying to do something. That works for me. Close enough for me. Now, one last thing here geopolitically, and I haven't brought her up in quite some time, but Tina Peters, of course, is apparently still in jail in Colorado. Completely corrupt sentencing, of course, there. She was holding on to data that she had to hold on to by law, having to do, of course, with voter records of the corrupt 2020 election. certainly federally and in Colorado more specifically. But she's being screwed with in prison. And wouldn't you know it, it's coming from a GED teacher in prison. Even worse. Again, even prison teachers are terrible. But she handwrote a grievance, and here is what she said. And I'm going to read this to you. It's about 3 pages here, or notepads, I should say. It's not long, but it's dated again, November 20th, 2025. It says the following, quote, "It has repeatedly come to my attention that GED teacher blank has been using his position to talk to his students about me and my case. His students have reported to me that he has showed in PowerPoint fashion, quote unquote, screenshots of the judge in my case, remarks on the TV, and most recently commented on legal aspects of my case. I have respectfully gone to him personally and privately to ask him to stop. He refused. This morning, at Medline, one of his students, blank, inserted herself to him and me about his right to talk to them about me. She escalated to the point Sergeant blank had to tell her to stop. Blank did nothing to de-escalate the attacks against me. Back at my unit, she continued to threaten me to the point other offenders, there we go, had to call her off. Blank is using his position to incite other offenders against me. I don't feel safe. I would like him to immediately stop talking about me and my case. Signed, Tina Peters." Again, it goes on, and she says, "He has reportedly shown screenshots on the TV of what the judge said, and most recently commented on, quote, why Trump can't pardon Tina Peters, unquote. Up until now, I have tried to ignore his lack of professionalism and breach of offender privacy. Yesterday, because he keeps involving his class in my case, I felt I needed to speak to him respectfully and ask him to please stop. I took the opportunity to speak to him privately when he and my teacher blank were walking by my unit together, as they were best friends. I told him I was coming to him personally instead of going to the higher-ups to ask him to please stop. He became very indignant and expressed it was his right as a teacher to answer his students' questions about my case. I could tell he was not going to honor my request to stop engaging in class in my affairs, so I turned around to go back into my unit, at which time he shouted that I, quote, threatened him." Sounds like a liberal, doesn't he? They cry out in pain as they're beating you. Sounds Jewish, too. When I asked what he was referring to, he brought up when I said, quote, out of respect, I'm coming to you personally instead of taking this to higher ups, unquote. It goes on here. It says, this morning at Medline, blank was one of the COs there. He regularly cancels his GED classes to work as CO. He kept trying to intimidate me by staring at me and making comments which incited one of his students, blank, to start yelling at me and saying that if I didn't want her teacher, blank, to talk about me, then I should tell the news to stop talking about me. She escalated all the way back to the unit, while other inmates were telling her to stop and shut up to no avail. I have never grieved another CO or person since I've been here, even though there have been countless occasions to do so. But this is threatening my security and vulnerability in this prison, especially since there was never anything done before when threats against me. I feel that a person in authority like blank is inciting violence against me in a place of his trust with students. I do not feel safe, and he should not talk about any offender and their affairs to other offenders. You would think that that would be standard policy, by the way. Apparently not. Or they just don't care because, hell, who follows policy in America? Clearly nobody. She wrapped up and said, I tried to respectfully and privately handle this with him, but his indignation and unwillingness to stop has brought me here to ask for your help. He should be held accountable and asked to stop any further discussions about me and my case, unquote. Yeah. He's basically trying to get her killed. He's trying to get her beat up. He's trying to get her intimidated. I mean, he's he is putting her life in danger, which is awful. Again, the election fraud and 2020 election fraud thing has got to come out. And I think, again, the simple fact that it will eventually is also because, of course, Donald Trump has a picture of an auto pen at the White House representing Joe Biden. It's a massive slap in the face. And I think it's more proof that the military is certainly behind what's going on to a great extent. But what the American people are being shown and being told, I think, is for serious educational purposes in an effort to wake people up. I have to be optimistic about it because, again, if you're not optimistic about some of the things that are taking place, while of course questioning some of the other things that are taking place, well, then you'll drive yourself crazy. And it will look like all hope is lost here, but I don't think that it is. I just think that a lot of Americans have to walk away from a lot of these systems. And again, assuming that Tina Peters is really in jail and that this isn't just kind of a kayfabe story that's being used to wake people up. I mean, one way or another, it's still waking people up to the corrupt nature of the judicial system and everything else. That, again, if you go up against government, government will do its best to put its boot right on the back of your head. So it's a terrible state of affairs. And if she really is in jail, I feel terrible for her, and it's beyond awful. But I don't know what else to do. There just has to be a complete cleansing regarding election fraud and election corruption. And again, if Congress doesn't act or the legislative branch doesn't do what they're supposed to do, because of course they were in on it, well, then you just have to take over the country with military force and do what you have to do to get rid of these people. And then free the innocent people and hold the guilty accountable. So everybody's waiting. But there has to be accountability sometime. The corruption's too thick. Again, it was mentioned in Q Drops that there will be accountability because, again, there has to be. Things of this magnitude cannot be unchecked and cannot go unchecked because it will happen again. Again, the government's already been weaponized against we the people endless times. So something has to give here. All right, education stuff. I've got a few things. Let me play this first. Jesse James and Outkast tossed this my way. This is a very well-rounded video here. It's about 6 minutes long, and it's John Stossel on Instagram. And he's talking about literacy. And of course, the fraud that is instructional literacy that has existed here, unfortunately, in American education for quite some time. It's all tech-driven. It's all poorly designed, again, in the interest of actually retarding students and keeping them from actually learning how to read, write, comprehend, spell, the whole thing in a very short amount of time. He even references a podcast, which I've played audio from on the show here, that was thrown my way by another listener of the show back during the summer, which of course highlights phonics as being the way to teach people how to read and how to write and how to spell, all of that. Again, it's not complicated. The unfortunate part is that no one reinvents the corrupt, rotten wheel like the American education system. They do it all the time. And of course, it's based on money, and it's designed, again, to dumb people down. So again, this is about 6 minutes long. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Did you guys know that Gen Alpha can't read?
My child is in the 2nd grade and can't read.
I teach 7th grade. They are still performing on the 4th grade level.
Over the past 30 years, many American children stopped learning to read.
Around 40% of our 4th graders can't read at a basic level.
I can't do it no more. I can't do it.
Why can't they do it? Because of how they're being taught.
The power that we are going to learn today, it's called picture power. Can we say picture power?
Picture power!
She's teaching reading using balanced literacy, a technique pushed by teachers' colleges that's supposed to make reading more fun.
The learning goal would be that the children were able to use a picture to figure out an unknown word.
They're training the kids to be bad readers.
Niels Hoven, who designed an app that teaches kids to read, says,
If you ask any parent who's teaching their kid to read, it seems fairly obvious. You teach them the letter sounds, and you teach them to blend those sounds together, and then your kids start reading.
That's called phonics. The National Institutes of Health says systematic phonics instruction produces significant benefits.
For some reason, for the past several decades in our school, this is not the way that they teach reading.
One reason is that liberal activists said phonics drills take the joy out of reading.
They're so boring. I swear they do a better job than Nembutal or Trazodone in putting children to sleep.
This balanced literacy teacher actually discourages her student from sounding words out.
Stop doing that. Stop. You can't sound out. I don't know why you started doing that.
Instead, the child should
look at the picture
and try to guess the word. Balanced literacy was widely accepted until 2 years ago, when podcaster Emily Hanford released a series called Sold a Story. Parents told her,
it didn't seem like they were really teaching them to read. It seemed like they were teaching them to sound like they could read.
States quickly started passing new science of reading laws that put more emphasis on phonics. It upsets education professors like Andrew Johnson.
I'm a bald-headed liberal, but I've been teaching students how to teach phonics for the last 29 years.
Johnson says the balance between phonics drills and real books should be up to teachers.
A teacher's job is to help children fall in love with books. Based on the need of the kid, you design instruction.
What they've been teaching, he says, was just fine.
You don't want the government involved in stuff, right?
No.
Why are they getting involved in reading instruction?
Because you people screwed it up so badly.
Oh, me?
Education
Who are
professors.
We people? How did we screw it up? I hope they look back and call this the Hanford era. In 10 years, when they see this house of cards come tumbling down, when they see they've wasted billions of dollars on this boondoggle.
Some teachers' unions join him in opposing the new laws.
I'm impassioned about this because it's a social justice issue.
Johnson helped create this journal that publishes articles that say how literacy is taught has everything to do with race, class, and identity.
They jingle the keys and say, look at over here. It must be those bad teachers, while ignoring the social things like poverty.
Some teachers oppose phonics because George W. Bush pushed it.
Can a child read at grade level?
If George Bush is telling us what to do, we aren't going to do it.
Time magazine quoted teachers who called phonics dehumanizing, colonizing, the man telling us what to do.
It became this holy war. We have all these scientists, all these researchers who are not political, and they've been in the labs, they've been looking at brain scans, they've been looking at rigorous studies, and we know that phonics is the way that kids learn to read.
The change in Mississippi provided more evidence.
Students here ranked last in reading.
But then Mississippi added more phonics, helped kids early, and held back those who couldn't read. Scores shot up faster than in any other state. People call it the Mississippi miracle. Mississippi went up, and where's your state? Down here, fifth from the bottom. Minnesota dropped because of your bad teaching.
My bad teaching. I wish the world were as black and white as that. I wish there were an algorithm.
There is an algorithm to teach reading.
Owen uses it in his app.
The first step is memorize all of the sounds the letters make. And the second step is learn to blend those sounds together. That's the entire reading algorithm. It's not rocket science. We have 2-year-olds now reading simple reading books, and I think we really undersold what kids are capable.
But your app is expensive. $500 a month.
The majority of the kids who are using our app are using it for free because we make it available to schools for free.
Other free apps teach phonics too.
Hi, friend. It's time for a new book.
Thankfully, parents now have better options. And you parents should know, you shouldn't wait for teachers. Reading isn't something that just happens in school. You are your kids' first teachers, starting when you first speak to your baby.
Yesterday, you were an absolute angel.
You teach your children just by sharing the joy of words in everyday life. Talking to them.
Open and shut.
Singing with them.
Is that your favorite song right now?
Helping them make up stories.
I'm that demonstrators. A scarecrow.
And reading aloud.
And think of all the different ways we can show our love.
All that helps your kids learn that most important skill, reading.
One of the nutbags in that audio clip He was being interviewed for C-SPAN back in what appeared to be the 90s. His name is Jonathan Kozol. Now, I've never spent any time on the show, believe it or not, talking about Jonathan Kozol, because he makes my skin crawl. He's a Jewish communist, and he's written endless books in the field of education, and most of his books are, again, thrown down the throats of endless graduate students and even undergraduates, and they're told, again, you have to read these because he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And all he does is whine and complain about the education system, and as you heard him say, he basically says that teaching students phonics is as basically effective as drugging them so that they just fall asleep. Well, he's an idiot, because phonics is exactly how you teach people to read. Again, McGuffey readers. I've said it a million times if I've said it 1,000,001. It's exactly why there are no copies of the McGuffey readers inside of American schools. It doesn't exist, because it's the easiest way to teach people how to read. I'd go so far as to say an illiterate child could pick up a physical copy of the earliest pictorial primer of the McGuffey readers, pick it up, and literally teach themselves without any help. They could look at the picture, they could look at the word under the picture of the animal and immediately say it, and then start to recognize the letters and their sounds and actually be self-taught. This is how innate the ability to read is in people, so much that it probably doesn't even need formal instruction. Now, formal instruction helps, but as we all know, if the formal instruction sucks, well, then the person isn't going to be able to read. Certainly not the child. Again, you had a teacher in one of those clips there telling the student to not sound out the words and not sound out the letters, to just look at it and memorize it. That's absurd. It's not the way that it's taught. But again, they're reinventing the wheel, and they're failing, and they wonder why. Well, it's pretty clear as to why. Here's another reason as to why the entire business sucks. And again, many of the people in it, certainly individuals affiliated with teachers' unions, do. This was tossed to me by a friend and a listener of the show. This is from the Daily Caller, and it was titled a few days ago, Leaked NEA Training Coaches Teachers to Fight Conservative Parents, Paint Republicans as Racist Threat. Name calling. It's all they have. They don't have brains, they don't have instruction, they don't have following the law, they just have name calling. It's beyond ridiculous. Again, share your pronouns, everybody. Here's a picture of a slide, completely ridiculous. It says, quote, the National Education Association is training teachers to advance gender and racial ideology in classrooms and to fight Republicans and parent groups who harm us all, quote unquote, by trying to stop that agenda according to leaked materials for an upcoming training event. Participant handouts for the NEA's Advancing LGBTQ+ Justice and Transgender Advocacy Training accuse the right of using an arsenal of racist dog whistles and transphobic tropes to whip up fear and cause harm. Parental advocacy group Defending Education discovered the materials coach teachers how to indoctrinate children into progressive dogmas, including gender ideology and pronoun use, among other woke principles. I feel like I've read this before. I feel like I have, because it's just so repetitive. This stuff happens all of the time, and these people don't hide it. Again, they have absolutely no problem letting people know exactly what they're doing, and they're so stupid that they give giant presentations on this, not believing that anybody in the room doesn't like them. I mean, again, they talk to giant crowds of people, and they assume that everybody is there just drinking it all in and supporting them 100%, and they're not going to leak this information to somebody or tell someone else. It's embarrassing. It says that this training is scheduled for December 2nd through the 6th and is meant to dismantle systems of privilege and oppression as it relates to LGBTQ+ educators and students and, quote, deepen skills and strategies to confront implicit bias, microaggressions, and stereotypes. It sounds like they're violating the law, certainly an executive order. These teachers' unions have to be abolished. Why anybody pays into them is beyond me. Quote, the right has exploited ignorance about transgender people and our lack of an affirmative race-forward message to advance anti-trans attacks, further splinter and impugn the left, and sabotage progressives on a broad range of issues, NEA said in the materials. Quote, over the last 10 years, Republicans in state legislatures have increasingly turned to anti-transgender rhetoric and legislation as a powerful complement to their arsenal of racist dog whistles used to whip up fear and consolidate power. We're not afraid of people who are pretending and playing dress up. That's not what anybody on the so-called right believes. We aren't afraid of you. We just don't like you. And it doesn't belong in school. But this is what happens when you don't know your subject matter. You teach your feelings. And when you're not intelligent on any kind of real history, science, literacy, certainly, hence the audio clip played earlier, math, and any other subject, you're left to teaching your feelings. And part of your feelings, unfortunately for these weirdos, of course, is sexualization and sexualizing minors and normalizing all of that. But again, if it's done out in society, it's a crime. But if it's done inside of a school, it's policy. And then, of course, this week you have this as well. This is from Zero Hedge. U.S. State Department designates DEI as a violation of human rights. Of course. Of course it is. It's anti-gender or anti an individual's birth sex. It's anti-DNA. Let's just put it that way. It's anti-genitalia, clearly. They want to cut kids' genitals off. It's anti-white. We know that for a fact. It's anti-male. So basically, again, in summary, if you're a white male with genitalia, that's what DEI policies are designed to discriminate against. Anybody who fits in that category. Again, it's an us and them, us versus them mentality. That's it. It's a, if you don't fit our mold, then you're a problem. But again, it's illegal. It violates the Civil Rights Act. I've been over it before, but everybody gets that confused that the Civil Rights Act was about, again, giving rights to Black Americans. That wasn't it. It was about giving rights to all Americans, regardless of skin color. But DEI policies are anti-civil rights. And then, of course, they would scream the exact opposite. Well, if you're getting rid of DEI, then you're, that's a civil rights violation. No, it isn't. You already have rights. You already have them. Anything that's created, then, to strip people of rights or to single people out and discriminate and or keep people away from a particular thing, that's the civil rights violation. But words without any action don't mean anything. Arrest someone. Arrest these people. Don't just find them. Arrest them. They're engaging in fraud. They're engaging in massive, again, civil rights violations. Arrest somebody. Arrest the head of the teachers' union. Lock them up. Shut them down. Again, if you're using money and fraud across multiple businesses within a business, isn't that basically racketeering? Aren't you running a racket on people? I mean, after all, you're taking money from teachers through coercion as a teachers' union by promising them something that you aren't delivering on by any stretch of the imagination. And then you're taking that money to literally make their job harder. Because it gets laundered and filtered through all of these NGOs, and then it comes right back into the education system and teaches them to be communistic. Teaches them to be perverse. And if they're neither of those things, then you lose your job. And if you call out the communistic application of anything, or the presence of communism within the system, if you call out the brainwashing, the false curriculum, or the perversion, any one or the above, or all of the above, then you lose your job too. Isn't that a racket? Isn't that being done then in a threatening manner? as if to again say that if you don't do what we do, well, then you're going to get the boot and we're going to steal your money in the process. It's racketeering. Again, most unions are racketeering. I mean, shut them down. Shut them down completely. I'm shocked anybody pays into them. And again, they're only there, theoretically, I should say, they're only there in an attempt, so they tell you, to provide you legal advice or legal counsel if you are accused of something. But they don't even do that. They are a political NGO on their own, separate from anything else. But they've always been influenced, of course, by other NGOs and, of course, communistic ideologies and everything else. And it has, again, a direct impact on what goes on inside of the classroom when it comes to instruction. People just have to walk away from these systems. I know I'm a broken record on it. I'm going to keep saying that. You cannot fix the American education system by any stretch of the imagination. It has to burn to the ground. And again, the fastest way to do that is to just walk away. But too many people are brainwashed into the system and don't understand a way out. Endless resources, again, exist on my website, AmericanEducationFM.com, under the Education tab, Education Documents tab, rather. Giant free PDF with lots of resources. Homeschooling programs, online programs, all accredited, by and large anyway. Certainly Abeka is. Some are paid, some are free. There you have it. People need to stop paying into their own slavery and into their own brainwashing. It's disgusting. Now, speaking of a racket, one jab-related story, and then I'm going to finish with an unrelated story, just sort of a story having to do with good deeds. Again, and how you can sort of change a system and even shake some people out of their brainwashing to some extent, although not everybody. But it's kind of a heartwarming story at that. But first, again, you talk about a racket. This is another example. This was on Disclosed TV, and it was titled, UK concludes, the United Kingdom, concludes their biggest pandemic simulation with virus targeting children. Now, this is interesting, of course, and they would have to do that because they want gullible parents to believe it, and they're prepping for something. And anytime they run these simulations, they're not doing it because they have to. They're doing it because they want to, and they want to manipulate people for some kind of a measure that they implement down the line. They did it with the COVID lie. They've done it with copious amounts of so-called illnesses because, again, it embeds that story in the brains of people, and then they blindly believe it. It says the following here. This autumn, the UK conducted Exercise Pegasus, the country's biggest pandemic simulation in nearly a decade, and its first Tier 1 national emergency exercise since COVID-19. COVID-19 doesn't exist. Concluding last month, it involves ministers, all devolved nations, COBRA activation, which I had to look that up. COBRA stands for Cabinet Office Briefing Room A when it comes to 70 Whitehall, London, used for high-level crisis management. Sounds like a building that should be burned to the ground. And every major government department. Participants faced a fictional novel strain of enterovirus, if I'm saying that right, D68 or EVD68 that originated on the imaginary Southeast Asia islands of Musania, God knows, after a food festival. Here you go. Where have we heard this before? Unlike COVID-19, though, which doesn't exist, the simulated virus primarily killed infants, children, and teenagers, causing respiratory failure, brain swelling, and occasional paralysis. The three-phase drill began in September with regional spread in Asia, progressed in October to the WHO declared pandemic, with school closures, hospital strain, and street protests over social distancing. Then escalated in November to national lockdown, non-essential business shutdowns, travel bans, and fears of food shortages from potential pig herd infection. Again, They run these simulations because they want to roll this out as a simulation on humans, and humans will believe it, just like they did COVID. People fell for that too, and they'd fall for this hook, line, and sinker also, unless, of course, they've woken up and they walk away. It says Sir Peter Horby, director of the Pandemic Sciences Institute at Oxford University, which, by the way, there's never been a pandemic, not ever, in the history of anything. So the simple fact that you have an institute at Oxford University specifically designed for so-called pandemics, that pretty much proves again that you have to have the lie in place in order to have these people receive a paycheck. He said, quote, "The choice of an enterovirus is a good choice because it is a real possibility with real risks, but is different from what we have seen before. Sure." It says ministers tested both containment and mitigation decisions, including whether early travel restrictions could keep the virus out of Britain. The exercise followed COVID inquiry findings that pre-2020 plans focused only on coping with high deaths rather than prevention, and that school closures, quote, brought ordinary childhood to a halt, unquote. Lessons from Pegasus will be published next year. Sounds like they're planning for something. Again, do not comply. Don't comply. If they say, close your business because of an illness, you keep your business open. In fact, let's revisit this. Let's go down a little COVID memory hole, just to sort of get everybody's blood pumping a little bit. Remember that, ladies and gentlemen? Remember the COVID lie? Remember all of the tyranny? Remember police officers showing up in mass in American restaurants and other places and businesses and XYZ saying, you need to close your doors. You need to get out of here. There's COVID and it's serious and there's ordinance this and policy that and blah, 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 blah. And people just complied. They signed on the dotted line of a citation. They went along with it. What are you going to do the next time? What are you going to do? What if they start to arrest you? Are you going to allow them to arrest you for not breaking any law, for violating all of your rights? Or are you going to stomp on their throat? You have a decision to make. Everybody's going to have a decision to make if something like this kicks off again. Every single person. All these businesses shut down again, kiss your business goodbye. Hell, kiss your conscience goodbye, because you don't have one. And you clearly don't have a memory. People should band together against these police officers. They should grab them, throw them to the ground, and kick them until, of course, they leave. If they start shooting, great. Shoot an American or two. Then watch what happens. Then you have a full-blown civil war. I know for a fact that in this country, endless people will not take it any longer. They won't take it. I remember all of that nonsense. Stand on the sticker. That sticker will protect other people from COVID. You could be sick and not know it. You could be asymptomatic, which doesn't exist. This kind of tyranny is outrageous, and the fact that these people practice this kind of tyranny implementation should drive everybody crazy. Because ultimately, why are they practicing it? Do you just practice baseball to not play in a game? Do you practice anything to not perform it? They're practicing it because they're paid to practice it, because they're paid to implement it. The fact that these simulations take place alone is an outrage. Completely ridiculous. They should outlaw these simulations. And they should outlaw the groups that perform these simulations, and the companies, and the organizations, and the committees. Get rid of all of them. But there's so many brainwashed people into actually believing that these simulations are done as some kind of a preventative measure. No, they're not. They're done as a dry run-through, as a script read, a table read, for example, like among actors. And they just sit around, and this is what they do. Again, I've played the audio on the show of these simulations before. These people are nuts. And they're actually made up of, in some cases, real actors and ex-politicians and recognizable people. And they go around a table and they all simulate all of this. Well, it turns out that Judge so-and-so was killed from this virus, and everybody in their courtroom was killed, and they all dropped dead, and then it spread throughout an entire town. How are we going to react to that? Remember all the paperwork, too, after the COVID lie regarding government and what these governments were putting out in the WHO, specifically, the UN, and all these other organizations. All these globalist organizations were openly saying, we weren't strong enough. We weren't tough enough on humans. We need to destroy them the next time. We need to get them to comply more the next time. Again, these people exist. These organizations still exist. These committees still exist. And their definition of more compliance means literal more death, more people imprisoned. Again, all of those massive quarantine camps, they still exist. They're still out there. They didn't get to use them the way that they wanted to the last time rather. So why not just sit on them for a few years, lull everybody back to sleep, to then roll them out again and pack them to the brim the next time? Absolutely not. People are going to get killed the next time around. But again, that's also what the enemy wants. They want people going after their own law enforcement. They want their own law enforcement to go after the people because that will justify even more lockdowns, quote unquote. It's nuts, isn't it? It's just nuts. It even drives me crazy when people in the UK call it lockdown, and they do. If you listen to anybody who's from or lives in the UK, they all say lockdown like it was an actual thing that they actually did. Because they did. They went along with it. But if an American who has a set of balls on him openly looks at somebody from the UK and is like, lockdown, what the hell are you talking about? They're like, oh, you Americans weren't on lockdown? No, we weren't. We weren't. The dumb ones did that. And the more brainwashed even killed themselves because they were like, gosh, this lockdown's horrible. What am I going to do? And then they'd kill themselves. That happened too. The casual nature in which people talk about COVID, like it's a real thing, like all of that was normal and believable. I mean, again, yikes, believable, give me a break. That just means, again, that they want to roll it out again in the future. Why wouldn't they want to? Not to mention Donald Trump's in office again. They want another political distraction and inability to do a particular thing. And, of course, shut down schools. Force jabs on every kid and every teacher. Kill the entire profession again. I mean, who's going to put up with it? I also find it funny that they openly say that this alleged illness, which of course doesn't exist, impacts pigs. So it allows them to just slaughter endless pigs. Well, Brits enjoy a good piece of pork from time to time. Not the Muslims, though, do they? So it caters to the Muslim crowd over there in the UK. Pulls everybody again out of school because, you have to listen to government and do what they say. If this happens again in my lifetime, it's game on. More so than the last time. I just hope everybody else is on the same page. I hope that more people have woken up to this. So, yeah. Exercise Pegasus. Just in case you're curious, it's something they're playing around with because, again, they don't have lives, and they like screwing with yours and mine. And I don't like that. Okay, speaking of screwing with lives and trying to actually improve something, this is how the actions of an individual can make a difference, I think. I came across this particular story on Gab, and I wanted to read it here just in conclusion for this particular episode, of course. Happy Thanksgiving again, everybody, until next week. And here's the story. It says the following, quote, "My name's Raymond. I'm 73. I work the parking lot at St. Joseph's Hospital. Minimum wage, orange vest, a whistle I barely use. Most people don't even look at me. I'm just the old man waving cars into spaces. but I see everything, like the black sedan that circled the lot every morning at 6 a.m. for 3 weeks. Young man driving, grandmother in the passenger seat. Chemotherapy, I figured. He'd drop her at the entrance, then spend 20 minutes hunting for parking, missing her appointments. One morning, I stopped him. Quote, "What time tomorrow?" Unquote. 6:15, he said, confused. Space A7 will be empty. I'll save it. He blinked. You can do that? Unquote. I can now, I said. Next morning, I stood at A7 holding my ground as cars circled angrily. When his sedan pulled up, I moved. He rolled down his window speechless. He said, "Why?" He replied, "Because she needs you in there with her," I said. "Not out here stressing." Unquote. He cried right there in the parking lot. Word spread quickly. A father with a sick baby asked if I could help, a woman visiting her dying husband. I started arriving at 5 a.m., notebook in hand, tracking who needed what. Saved spots became sacred. People stopped honking. They waited, because they knew someone else was fighting something bigger than traffic. But here's what changed everything. A businessman in a Mercedes screamed at me one morning, quote, "I'm not sick. I need that spot for a meeting," unquote. Quote, "Then walk," I said calmly. "That space is for someone whose hands are shaking too hard to grip a steering wheel." He sped off furious, but a woman behind him got out of her car and hugged me. Quote, "My son has leukemia," she sobbed. "Thank you for seeing us," unquote. The hospital tried to stop me. Liability issues, they said, quote unquote, but the family started writing letters, dozens. Raymond made the worst days bearable. He gave us one less thing to break over. Last month, they made it official. Quote, "Reserved parking for families in crisis," unquote. 10 spots, marked with blue signs. They all asked me to manage it. But the best part, a man I'd helped 2 years ago, his mother survived, came back. He's a carpenter, built a small wooden box, mounted it by the reserved spaces. Inside, question mark? Prayer cards, tissues, breath mints, and a note. "Take what you need, you're not alone. Raymond and friends." People leave things now, granola bars, phone chargers. Yesterday, someone left a hand-knitted blanket. I'm 73. I direct traffic in a hospital parking lot, but I've learned this. Healing doesn't just happen in operating rooms. Sometimes it starts in a parking space. When someone says, quote, "I see your crisis, let me carry this one small piece," unquote. So pay attention. At the grocery store checkout, the coffee line, wherever you are, someone's drowning in the little things while fighting the big ones. Hold a door, save a spot, carry the weight no one else sees. It's not glamorous, but it's everything, unquote. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I'll catch you next Wednesday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.